And good evening, everyone. Welcome to episode 329 of everyone's favorite wrestling podcast, The Up and Marks.
I'm Jay. He is
the brainless one. And I talk about a very interesting week in professional wrestling.
To say the least. As of a couple days ago, I was like, this week's going to be a little thin on content. And then WWE and TKO Holdings say, hold my beer.
How about the fact that not even that, there's a lot of stuff, because I was doing the notes before the show, and I was telling Nicole, I said, other than the WWE releases, all of my stuff is AEW related.
I got a whole bunch of WWE stuff I wrote down, so.
Which is funny because I'm protesting AEW, and I still had multiple AEW things on my list. In fact, AEW gets mentioned at the back end of the podcast as well, numerous times.
Yeah, I hear that. What's up, Timmy?
Oh, I can't see the comments.
Yeah, I'll see if I can fix that at some point. Anyway.
It's fine, Cousin Jay. It is fine. If that's the worst thing that we got to deal with this, I'll live.
Right. All right. Where do you want to start, Brainless One?
I think we just get right into the releases, because that's the biggest thing that happened this week. You know, I'm surprised. Ooh, it's almost like the little bottom line thing for ESPN. I'm just waiting for the thing that says breaking news. Bobby is still brainless. But I mean, honestly, I don't have the ones from that, like the lower level NXT level up people, because I was like, I could mention it. I couldn't tell you, I couldn't name any of these people or told you where they were, what they did, or any of that stuff. If you gave me, if they were in the lineup, I wouldn't know who it is. But I mean, this is a very interesting list.
Go through the names.
Well, I think the one we can just kind of get out of the way is the one we kind of discussed last week, and if I'm not mistaken, was my brainless. No, that was Nia Jax. No, it was my bad. But Elias was on the list of the wrestlers who was released, so we finally got confirmation this week that he is now gone. Really no surprise to me. I did my Babe Ruth shot. Rick Boogs was one of the 22 people who got let go.
Yep.
Madcap Moss or Riddick Moss with Emma were both released this week.
Yep.
We have the big name. I mean, people can say it's the big name, but the first big name, the most surprising name for me, was Mustafa Ali. They're doing NXT No Mercy or NXT Backlash or NXT Great Balls of Fire, whatever the hell it is. I think it's next week. And Mustafa Ali is the number one contender for Dominic's North American Championship. And now he's gone. And apparently
Hold my beer.
And apparently this was a mutual decision. I know he had asked for his release at least months ago, if not a year ago.
Right.
But I mean, I was kind of surprised to see his name just because of the fact that he was number one contender for Dom's title. I don't get that. I mean, that almost was enough for me to give my brainless to, but I'm sorry, I had something.
There were other things that happened. There was a lot of brainless to semi-brainless things that went on in the last 6 days. A lot.
Jay, I think I have secured my brainless moment of the year this week. I'm sorry. It's gonna be tough to top my brainless for this week at any point the rest of this year or previously before this week.
So with the layoffs here, there were a couple of names that were, I would say, used to be big names. Dolph Ziggler, Shelton Benjamin.
Man,
Dolph has the third most TV matches of any WWE superstar.
WWE
champion, 6-time former Intercontinental champion, several-time former tag team champion, NXT champion. The list goes on and on. He had a 19-year run with the company. But let's be honest here. Looking at this list, who on this list has actually been prominently featured anytime recently outside of Mustafa Ali?
I'd say Elias up until Vince McMahon thought he looked too much like Randy Savage. Elias, I mean, think about this. We talked about it numerous times on this podcast. That reaction that him and Kevin Owens got in Seattle, the night they had their first night on SmackDown on Fox when they did the draft, or maybe not the first night, but when they did the draft and they were making a big deal about it and they were kind of flirting that it was going to be Roman Reigns finally moving to SmackDown. And then it ended up being Elias was the big surprise. And I mean, that was great. I was convinced he was going to win the King of the Ring, I think, when Baron Corbin ended up winning it. If I'm not mistaken, because we even saw Elias qualify or move on in the tournament at Norfolk.
Right.
So I would say that one definitely hurt. I would say the same thing with Shelton Benjamin. Madcap Moss just won the Andre the Giant Memorial Battle Royal recently.
Well, I'm talking like prominently featured on television, like in the last few months. Like,
oh God,
none of them have been prominently featured. Like, I saw Shelton Benjamin do a main event match with Cedric Alexander. I mean, I'm semi-surprised that Cedric made it through the cuts. Honestly, a name that Andy Vest brought up in the chat was Matt Riddle. I made my opinions known when all the stuff happened when they came back from India. Matt Riddle should be gone from the company.
Yeah, I agree.
To me, no reason to keep him around. Some of the other names on the list, you could have kept a Shelton Benjamin around just because he's a good hand. You could have kept a Dolph Ziggler around because he's a good hand and could do things. Yeah, they're on the upper end of like Shelton Benjamin's like 50. And Dolph is in his 40s. Okay, you know, you used up a lot of your time in the ring because they've taken a lot of bumps over a lot of years. All that being said, at least they're solid citizens and you don't have to worry about them going off at the bit randomly.
The last time they used Shanky was in the show in India, but that was because they used every single wrestler who had any kind of ties to India on the show. I mean, that's why we got WWE Hall of Famer, the Great Khali there.
Yeah.
And he fought for the Intercontinental title, Shanky. And it's like, I mean, and you're right. It's like Top Dollar. Why did they get rid of Top Dollar and they didn't get rid of the rest of Hit Row if Hit Row has been that trash? What has B-Fab done?
Right.
Does anybody even know what the other guy's name from Hit Row is? I know it's Ashanti Adonis, but like, does like the not so diehard fans who have the podcast know who Ashanti the Adonis is?
And as far as like seeing the name Dabakato on there, clearly a guy of his size, they tried with him a couple times and it just didn't come to fruition. They tried getting him over with Raw Underground. Then they tried getting him over as what was his gimmick name when he was with Apollo
Commander
Group?
Aziz.
Yeah, Commander Sneeze.
Gesundheit.
But you know, again, 22 names gone. Again, like Emma, I don't think got a fair shake when she returned. She showed up. They had her on TV a couple times, but for the most part, she wasn't doing much of anything.
Right.
Elias, I mean, really got screwed over by Vince when they changed him to Ezekiel and then changed him back. And when they changed him back, as you were stating, like last week, the way they had him eliminated from the Royal Rumble and the other things told you exactly how Triple H viewed him, because this was when Vince was not really there.
Right. I saw it as the quote unquote death sentence when Michael Cole was saying what he was saying about him in the Royal Rumble, and it's like right after the Rumble, okay, we're gonna put him in against Omos, and nothing against Omos. I like Omos. I'm an Omos sapien. So, but That's basically what Elias was doing. He was working 2-minute squash matches against Omos, and that was the only time he was ever on TV.
Right.
And it's just a shame because I think they really dropped the ball with him. And I agree with you with Emma. They didn't really give her a fair chance after she returned. It's like you needed all these. You were looking for more women to add some depth to the division. You got rid of Emma and you got rid of Aaliyah.
Yeah.
And it's like, did people are like, I didn't even know. They're like, well, wow, Aaliyah's gone and her impact in WWE after all those years was. And people forgot that she was a tag team champion.
Right.
She was down in NXT. She was basically Crash Davis. But I just, and Dana Brooke, they couldn't figure out what to do with Dana Brooke in 10 years.
Right.
So, I mean, honestly, like I said, I'm devastated about Shelton Benjamin because I've been a fan of Shelton's for a very long time. One of my favorites to watch in the ring. Hell of an athlete. I'm sad to see him go.
The greatest super kick of all time.
Greatest super kick of all time, yes. And then you got Dolph Ziggler. I'm sad to see him go. 19 years. The guy overcame being a male cheerleader.
And took one of the greatest looking spears of all time.
The greatest sells. Nobody could sell the only person who could sell better than Dolph Ziggler is Samoa Joe selling Samoan cookies. That's it.
And Shawn Michaels at 2005 SummerSlam is a close third.
They might be neck and neck, him and Dolph. I mean, and it's not even just the fact that he sold Goldberg's spear better than anybody else. I still remember when he dropped the U.S. title to Zack Ryder, and Zack Ryder hit him with the zigzag, I think it was. And that place went unglued. And he sold the shit out of that. I've never seen him. Scott Hall's another one that could sell, but I mean,
Scott Hall, Seth Rollins. Seth Rollins was the one where it finally felt like the Crossroads ending move was a big deal. Like and it was during Cody's first run. It wasn't during this current run that I was like, going, ooh, that looked devastating. And it was because Seth Rollins knows how to sell.
Right. Or The Rock selling a Stone Cold Stunner.
Right.
But I mean, it's sad. I mean, I'm almost positive Dolph's going to AEW. If there's anybody on this list that I can almost guarantee is going to AEW, it's Dolph Ziggler. His brother Ryan works there. They could do like a kind of like a Hollywood. Somebody said Hollywood Florida Blondes.
Right.
I think that would be a lot of fun to see.
I mean, I could see somebody like Emma going over to AEW. I don't see a lot of people on this list where I'm like going, oh yeah, they're definitely going over to AEW. It's very possible Dolph could be like, you know what, I'm done with wrestling, and I'll just do my comedy thing. It seems like he's the type of dude who has probably saved his money over the years.
Right. And he could go to Hollywood too.
Yeah.
So I think, and he's a funny dude. I know his stand-up comedy is pretty popular, and he gets a lot of people to show up, but he's a funny dude, and I think he'll be all right. But I could really see him going. If there was anybody on this list of the 22 names, he's the one that if I had to put money on it, it goes to AEW. It's him. I don't see
Mike Rainey saying that he believes Emma and Riddick will go to Impact.
Agreed. I was actually thinking the same thing. I could see Riddick Moss and Emma going to Impact because I think that would be a good place for both of them. Because what the hell is he going to do in AEW? He just, I'm sorry. I just don't. Am I the only one that doesn't see it with Madcap Moss? Am I the only one? Am I blind? I know I wear glasses and I'm old and I'm in my 40s and I don't see like I used to when I was in my teens. But am I not seeing it? Is there something about Riddick Moss that I just don't see? Is it maybe because I subconsciously don't like him because he used to play for the Philadelphia Eagles?
Maybe.
Or is it the fact that they just completely ruined how I feel about him with that stupid Madcap Moss gimmick? Or is it the fact that between him and the guy I actually liked who played in the NFL, Sammy Piscatelli, Tino Sabatelli, that was the one that actually got released years ago? And I just didn't see it with Riddick Moss, or is it because he's just got a dirt face? I don't get it. I don't see it. I don't see it with him. That's why he was. And the fact is that 9 and 10 on my list last week were released. I can't believe I got 2 of the names that actually got released.
Right.
And I knew it was going to be. I'm not really surprised about Madcap Moss. They didn't really, like you said, how many people have been predominantly used on television? The last time I think we saw Moss he was at the draft.
Right.
And an interesting thing, real quick. I'm sorry. I've noticed one thing about this. A lot of the people who were released, Mustafa Ali, Dolph Ziggler, Shelton Benjamin, Elias, a lot of those guys were technically free agents who haven't really done anything other than Mustafa Ali down in NXT since the draft. But man, why don't they like Top Dollar?
I don't know. I don't know if there's something going on behind the scenes. All that being said, Tim says he really, really wants to talk about the Maximum Male models being released and the beans they spilled about some of the stuff that went on behind the scenes. And I believe it was, I think it was Mansois who actually got the news while he was dropping his daughter off at school.
Saudi Taker,
who apparently was not allowed to lose on television because of the Saudi deal.
I said he's Saudi Taker. Every time they take him to Saudi Arabia, he has to win. Which is funny because if memory serves me correctly, LA Knight's first match back as LA Knight after he ditched the whole Max Dupree gimmick was against Mansois. I think he beat him. And it was funny because that was one of the things he mentioned. He said that LA Knight was out there and he beat Mansois. And then after the match, he was supposed to cut a babyface promo, and instead he called them incels and disrespected the fans. And then he went back to Triple H and said, "Oh, that's my bad." I heard that was one of the things that was mentioned in that.
Well, yeah, there was that. Mike Rainey, correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't they say that they weren't looking to release any superstars right now? Yes, that was specifically stated, I believe, by Nick Khan, that there would not be releases of superstars. But when you hear that they wanted to cut $50 million worth of stuff, minimum, and they released, 100 people from The Office, laid off 100 people last week. Like, there's no way in hell that's 50 million. More layoffs are coming. And who makes more money? The independent contractors or the office staff? The independent contractors do, clearly. And clearly this was them lying to the people. They were trying to put up a good front while they were doing the merger, only to go back on their word after the merger. Oh, by the way, as an aside to this, this might be after the CEO of TKO Holdings talked glowingly of Vince McMahon. This, that, and the other thing. This is so great. I wouldn't want this company with anybody but Vince. TKO Holdings comes out this week and says, oh, yeah, we might have some bad publicity because Vince is on our board and he's one of our big owners. And now Vince is putting like all his shares up for sale. It almost feels like Vince knows he's about to get booted from, the new company. It almost like feels like he knows this. And did they sit there and wine and dine him and romance him and say, like, yes, this is what we're going to do. You're going to maintain power and you're going to maintain control. And now they're going to kick him to the curb. Do you believe they are truly going to kick him to the curb?
No, because Vince McMahon came out and said, I'm going to live forever to do this shit, pal. His mother made it to, what, 102? 101, something like
137.
that? Vince McMahon is going to be Tom Hanks. And I said this on Twitter to somebody. I told him that. Because they retweeted it or something like that. Vince McMahon said he wants to live to be 130. He's like 74. I said, if Vince McMahon... I'm
78.
thinking to myself...
78, and he said 120. 120.
I was like, no matter what, I'm like, if he tries to make it to like 130, 140, he's going to outlive me. But I'm convinced he is going to be Tom Hanks from the Green Mile. Everybody else around him is going to die, and he's going to live to be like 300 years old. They're going to be bringing out Vince McMahon in an iron lung at WrestleMania 100. I mean, I won't be able to be there to see it because I would have to live to be 102. But they're going to do that. I mean, this is what we've come to. Vince McMahon is going to live forever. And he's not going anywhere. I would love for them to get rid of him. Because if they were to get rid of him, I wouldn't be surprised if it was Stephanie that took over for him. That's why Nick Khan came out and did that interview last week and said what he said about Stephanie.
Right. And
a lot of people, and they said that after all those releases, the 100 people who lost their job in the company, that morale in the building has never been lower. And they don't think that would have happened if Stephanie was there. I think, like, towards going in the future, if TKO wants to do great things and have WWE blossom and not have the bad publicity with it, Vince has got to go. Because the man has outlasted the steroids trial. He's got all these different lawsuits against him. Jerry McDevitt has already said he's going to retire. I don't know. It's just there's too much of a dark cloud over Vince McMahon. And if they really want to make a lot of money and make this a good investment, the TKO Holdings does, he's got to go.
Well, while you're talking about making a lot of money, it was announced almost simultaneously after they released 22 people. 22 people lost their jobs who were performers, and we had 100 plus lose their jobs last week. A historic TV rights deal was signed. $1.4 billion with the USA Network, and USA Network is going to be the new home for Friday Night SmackDown.
Again.
How tone deaf are these MFers? You release all these people, you lay off all these people, and you announce this historic deal. And mind you, this is for the show that's the 2-hour-long show. I'm guessing USA Network, aka NBC Universal, said, you know what? For the price they're asking for Monday Night Raw, no thank you.
We can have Roman Reigns.
And we could take Friday Night SmackDown and get the audience that we currently get and not have to pay, I'm going to guess if they continue to keep Raw at 3 hours, $2 billion for the next 5 years.
They're also going to, it's not going to be just Raw. They're going to get Raw and NXT because wherever Raw goes, NXT's going with them, apparently.
And my guess is, you know, originally the chat was maybe it's ESPN, maybe it's FX. They became the home of SmackDown, and maybe that has now reversed where it's like, okay, NBC has taken SmackDown.
Yeah.
Will this now mean that whether it's ESPN, Amazon, or FX be the new home for Monday Night Raw? In my personal opinion, I think putting it on Amazon would be a huge mistake.
Big time.
you might be able to get a little bit more of a international audience because Amazon's everywhere. But not everybody has Amazon.
No.
But many people here in the U.S. and around the world have, whether it's ESPN or FX. If they're trying to build up FX, that's a way to, put something that has an already large, built-in, loyal audience.
Yeah.
Now, this also may turn SmackDown into the B show depending on where Raw and or NXT end up. But my guess is it will be the Disney Corporation, ABC, ESPN that will inevitably end up with Raw and NXT.
I think you're right. I thought about it for the longest time that it could have been ESPN, maybe for SmackDown. I don't know about Raw. I don't think Pat McAfee's going to want to do broadcasting for 3 hours.
Yeah.
Not when he was better off on SmackDown. But I just think it's so stupid. 22 people lost their jobs this week, a week after the worst wrestler in the history of professional wrestling returned to WWE and might have actually legitimately hurt the women's world champion.
Right.
People lost their jobs so Nia Jax's family could eat. And it's like, really? How can you justify that? Forget about the fact that they just got $11 billion from USA in I think it's going to be 2024 at some point.
Yeah,
when they switch over
next September.
Next September on the USA Network, they're going to get $11 billion. But the fact is, all these people lost their jobs and Nia Jax returned.
And beyond that, there are 3, and I would legit call them superstars whose contracts are up in 2024. And I wonder if they're going to get paid or if they're going to be part of, let's let these contracts end. One of them we've already talked about very prominently on this show, Drew McIntyre. His contract ends in 2024. Becky Lynch. Her deal is up in 2024. And for you, I know that this is a big deal. Sheamus.
Oh, you didn't give me
his deal is up in 2024.
They won't do it
What
to
do
me.
you think is going to happen to these 3 superstars?
They're not going to do it to me, Jay. They better not do it to me. If they do it to me, I'm going to be very upset. I'm on full tilt as it is after everything that AEW has done, and I have no reason to watch their crap on Wednesdays or Fridays or Saturday nights anymore. If they take my Sheamus away from me in WWE, Jay, I'm going to end up watching Impact every Thursday. I'm going to end up getting the New Japan Pro Wrestling channel where I pay 990 yen. Because that's all I'm going to be able to watch is Impact Wrestling and New Japan. It'll be fun, though, Jay. We could talk about El Minnesota de Vikingo as I watch AAA every week. They can't, Jay. They can't get rid of Sheamus. They can't do it. I don't see them getting rid of Becky. There's no way. They're already. I'm sorry.
I was going to say, my belief here is Sheamus and Triple H are really close friends. When Triple H was still an active competitor, the two of them worked out together.
Yep.
Sheamus still has gas left in the tank. I think he may want to have limited dates because of the spinal stenosis. I know he's doing stuff to help try to counteract that, but the dude could still go. Becky Lynch, if you want to keep that women's division vital, I think is a very important signing to have. Her husband is in WWE, is currently the heavyweight champion on Raw. I don't see her going anywhere. The one that I would have questions about is Drew McIntyre. I think at this point, maybe a little bit over 50-50 that he stays. But if TKO is trying to cut salary, do they make a decision with one of these three high-priced, very well-established talents?
The only way I could see Becky leaving is if she's actually done and she's going to retire and just stay at home and be a mom.
Yeah,
I could see that. But Becky,
mom.
But she is the face of the women's division. I don't care what anybody says about Charlotte Flair. Becky Lynch is the face of the women's division in WWE. That would be the biggest one to lose. And apparently, I heard that Seth Rollins' contract is up in 2024 at some point too, which would be another big one for them to lose. But I agree. If there was one that was definitely going to go, I'd say Drew is the most likeliest to go. If they want to break my heart and make Gunther my favorite wrestler, then Sheamus would have to go. But I don't know. They're going to be getting a lot of money in 2024. And if they are as big of players for MJF when his contract expires in a few months, although he hasn't mentioned that in a while.
Well, because he's gone face. Did you see the video that they did where it was almost a shot-by-shot thing to the Bret Hart, like with the little kid? Hey, Bret! They did that almost shot for shot with MJF, but instead of the sunglasses being put on to the kid, it was the scarf.
The scarf. I saw it. Bret still did it better.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's because nobody else is Bret the Hitman Hart, Cousin Jay.
He's the best there is, the best there was, and the best there ever will be.
He's also the excellence of execution.
Yes.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
All right. So Chris Brown put in the chat, on the flip side of all this, maybe they could be clearing salary space for Phil Brooks or MJF. So kind of going in what you were talking about with MJF. Again, I don't think CM Punk should be wrestling anywhere.
If they want to do a short time thing, like have him sign for Survivor Series, come in, work the Royal Rumble, work something for WrestleMania, and then say, see you later, I'm okay. I'm one of those ones that I have no problem with CM Punk coming back to WWE. Which is funny because a lot of names that we have mentioned so far have popped up because I actually came up with my top 10 what-ifs in wrestling history when we get to that at some point. Yeah. I'll tell you, that was a lot harder than I thought it was going to be. Not because I had a hard time.
She said.
I see what you did there. But there was a lot of different things I could have picked. I didn't realize like how many what-ifs there are in wrestling history.
Yeah.
But we'll get into that a little bit later. I mean, I'm looking at these, like, again, I'm looking back at the list of the wrestlers who got released, and it's like there's nobody really, like, were any of these guys really high-paying ones other than maybe Dolph Ziggler? Do you really think that Dabba-Kato was really breaking the bank for WWE, or Quincy Elliott, or the Maximum Male Models? I'm sure Saudi Arabia was paying for Mansoor's freaking to look dead every time he was out on SmackDown. Posing in front of the camera.
I know that was your favorite part of the Maximum Male Models.
That he looked dead inside.
Yes.
He looked just like I did when the 3 horses I bet in the triple finished last, second to last, and third to last. He looked like I did last night after watching the Giants play like absolute garbage against the 49ers.
Everybody plays like garbage against that 49ers defense. Let's be fair.
To be fair.
To be fair.
To be fair.
Tim, I have not watched Wrestlers on Netflix about Al Snow running OVW. I'll have to check it out. Have you seen the Brainless one?
I have not. You know what's funny? My father actually asked me about that. El Diablo Blanco himself had asked me about that. And I have not seen it. I want to see it. I just haven't. I've spent so much time in my car this week that I don't even know what life is outside of my car.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's definitely on the brainless one's radar. Because what does everybody want?
They want head.
What does everybody need? Head. What does everybody love? Head. And man, that dude looks jacked as fuck for a guy in his 50s too.
Right.
I definitely want to check it out. It's definitely something on my radar.
All right. So another thing that one Vincent Kennedy McMahon brought up when they had a meeting at WWE headquarters this week, and it's something I discussed briefly, and I need to get the brainless reaction from the meeting that was had at headquarters. I believe it was on Monday, where he said, and I quote, WWE plateaued. And basically, he was talking about them plateauing while he was away, and creative wasn't as good, and X, Y, and Z. Brainless one, I gave my thoughts on Wednesday. I'll share them again, but what are your thoughts on that?
I don't know how I feel about the whole plateaued comment. When he left, Sami Zayn was just kind of lost in
space.
Yeah, basically, Triple H put him with the bloodline, and Sami Zayn has taken off and has gotten a lot of consideration for my Wrestler of the Year for this year. Sami Zayn. Let's see. Eli Drake was a manager of a modeling industry with Maxine. Neither one of them is with that anymore.
And they're still employed.
Yeah. Let's see. Yeah, no. Vince has no idea what he's talking about. We all know that he wanted to go back to WWE, not because they plateaued, because he wanted to be in charge because it's Vince McMahon. And he sold the company because he wanted to make as much money as he possibly can while still having as much control as he possibly can. Let's be serious for 2 seconds, Vincent Kennedy McMahon. You're not fooling anybody, not even with that dastardly mustache or the do-rag you wore during the announcement of the merger, Vince. Nobody's falling for it, just like nobody's going to follow you to the train tracks so you can tie them up and Dudley Do-Right comes to save them. I don't see it, Vincent Kennedy McMahon. You're not fooling somebody called the Brainless One. Not by a long shot. I may be brainless, but I was not born last night. I think that's the old saying. Something like that.
Yesterday. You weren't born yesterday.
No, I was born like 40 some odd years ago. But
the thing is, there are so many data points that prove what Vince said 100% wrong.
The fact that they've had some of their highest rated SmackDowns since Triple H took over creative?
Yeah.
No, I can't. No, I can't think of anything like that.
The fact that they've had their most viewed pay-per-views since Vince left. Oh, by the way, again, and I will continue to tout some of the brilliance of Nick Khan. Nick Khan was the one said, hey, maybe we should start having these big stadium shows outside of the United States and bring it to an audience that hasn't seen it, one that's starving for this stuff. It was brilliant on his part. But they did that. Not only have they done that, but attendance is way up. Most of their shows now were I remember going to Raws. I remember going to SmackDowns where it wasn't full. We're talking John Cena era, where Vince, has a hard-on for that because he loves Cena so much. But there were a lot of audiences that, it just wasn't full. They have their best storyline in decades, maybe even ever, with the bloodline. Now, the beginnings of it started with Vince, but the true meat of it happened while Vince was away, and a lot of it had to do with Sami Zayn joining that. Since the breakup with Sami, like, bloodline storyline's still been okay, but has not been on the same damn level.
No. Because I think a part of that, though, with this whole storyline with the bloodline, I don't think it's as much about Sami Zayn being a part of it. It's the fact that they're trying to continue this thing on, and it's like, you guys have already jumped the shark.
Yeah.
Okay? The fact that you're trying to get Jimmy Uso to play this, I mean, if you're really trying to build for Jay and Jimmy to wrestle at WrestleMania next year, so be it. Fine. Let Jay Uso do his thing on Raw. I like what they're doing with Jay Uso on Raw. I really do. I've enjoyed what they've been doing. This whole Jimmy Uso trying to get back into the good graces of the bloodline. Like, really? Like, they couldn't just go do their own thing? Like, Jimmy had to be trying to get back in there?
Right.
They're just trying too hard now, because now they need to have Roman Reigns make it to WrestleMania 40 so that Cody Rhodes may or may not finish his story, or Roman may or may not wrestle his cousin, or Roman may or may not wrestle CM Punk, and Punk finally gets the main event of WrestleMania. Like, how much longer are you going to drag this out with the bloodline? It doesn't need to be dragged out any longer. Jimmy doesn't need to be there anymore. I don't even care that the fact that they're building towards, I think it's AJ Styles and John Cena versus Solo and Jimmy in Saudi Arabia, or at the next pay-per-view, or whenever they're going to do it. And believe me, I have nothing against John Cena. I've been enjoying John Cena's return, if we don't count WrestleMania 39. I mean, hell, The Miz's performance on Raw a couple of weeks ago was enough to win an Emmy, let alone a Marquee Award.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I'm sorry. It just seems like they're trying to keep, what is the old saying? Trying to get juice from a stone or something like that. Or they're trying to go to the well one too many times with this bloodline storyline. And it's like, Sammy's not there anymore. Sammy and Kevin had their moment at WrestleMania and took the titles from the Usos. And ever since, the Usos have lost the tag team titles, and and Jimmy beating Roman at SummerSlam. Like, what else can you do? Roman does not need the bloodline anymore. That's the big problem. He needs to be vulnerable. And I just think that now with this storyline, they're trying to keep it together when it should it's over. You've already come out weeks ago, if not months ago, and said that the Judgment Day is now the number one story. Now that the bloodline is kind of petered off a little, just spooky pals. But it's looking like the Judgment Day is going to break up before the bloodline. Then what are you going to do? What are you going to have, Imperium? The most compelling story right now in WWE is Chad Gable trying to get the Intercontinental Championship from Gunther.
True.
And Gunther is your guy. I've been saying it for a long time. Gunther's your guy. He's the guy you give the football to and let him run it 35, 40 times a game, because he's going to get you more than 4 yards per carry every time. That's your guy. That's your multiple-time WrestleMania main eventer. That's your multiple-time World Heavyweight Champion. That's the guy who could hold the title just as long as Roman has. He's the greatest champion in WWE history. Not greatest WWE champion, the greatest champion. Because not only is he on this epic run and is the longest reigning Intercontinental Champion, he held the NXT UK title for like 4,000 years. I mean, granted, he took the title.
The only person I think who's wrestled longer than that is Bobby Fish.
I was about to say, it's a shame that he took the title off of Bobby Fish 4,000 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, and I hear it was quite the match. They had a 2 out of 3 falls, and yeah, Gunther ended up taking the poison apple out of the Garden of Eden and feeding it to Bobby Fish. And that was just enough to get the fish to flop for 3 seconds.
But I think that the ship has kind of sailed with the whole bloodline. I'm sorry. It just seems like they're trying to go back to the well that has been dried out and trying to keep getting water from it. Just let Jay and Jimmy have their thing. Just do whatever you're going to do with Jimmy. It makes him look. I just don't like the way that Jimmy Uso is now being portrayed after he turned on his brother. And now Jay Uso's having a grand old time on Raw, even though he's getting his ass kicked by the Judgment Day after he super kicked the hell out of everybody on Monday. And Drew McIntyre, and tell me they're not planting that seed where Drew McIntyre's turning heel.
Right.
But I don't know, Jay. I think that they've jumped the shark with the storyline with the bloodline. That's just my opinion.
And there's ways that you could bring it back, but it definitely feels like right now it's retread.
Yeah.
They got to figure out a way to freshen it up because right now it's not fresh. And taking the title off Roman right now is not like who's waiting in the wings where you're like going, oh, yes, let's have that person do it. Because right now it's a SmackDown title. It's not like Gunther's on that show. You've got Bobby Lashley. That is it. And Bobby Lashley right now with the Street Profits is a heel. It'd be a heel-on-heel thing, even though Roman gets a lot of cheers. I think we're still a ways away from Roman Reigns losing the title. There are things out there saying that, Roman goes against The Rock at WrestleMania 40, and then he goes against Cody at WrestleMania 41, and that's how they finally changed the title. But the thing is, if you want to set up WrestleMania 40, and if you want The Rock to be a part of it, I don't think the title should be on the line.
Sure.
Because that will telegraph who's going to win. I don't see any scenario where they have that as a title match. Even if Rock, let's say, came back at the Royal Rumble, wins the Royal Rumble, takes on Roman Reigns because he won the Royal Rumble match. I don't see them like, Rocky wins the title and decides to ride off into the sunset as WWE champion. And I don't think Rocky, with the family lineage, thinks that that's the right way to do business. He knows the right way to do business is to be looking up at the lights and taking the pinfall. He knows that. So I don't see that happening. And it makes more sense to have Roman have the title for an extra year and a half so he could pass out that really long Hulk Hogan title reign. And as much as I'd like to see Cody finish the story by turning heel, I've softened a little bit on my stance on that because Roman has been a heel the whole time he's been champion. And going from heel champion to heel champion, the only way in my mind I could come up with that works satisfactorily to say, oh, it's okay that they continue to have a heel champion is the fact that Seth Franklin Rollins is a face champion, even though he still does heelish things from time to time. But the fact that they have another heavyweight championship where that person is not a heel, that's the only reason why I could think of it. But I still would rather have Cody turn heel to win the title just to say, my dad didn't do it, and because my dad couldn't do it the way that, on the up and up, and oh, by the way, I had my shot and I lost. I wasn't going to let anything stop me from attaining that goal. The American dream from the American nightmare.
Yes, but we need the American Nightmare versus the Ring General main eventing WrestleMania 41 or 42.
And I believe that was actually in the chat over here. Let me see if I could find it.
Because Gunther's because if everything I'm hearing is like really what they're trying to do with WWE, their two biggest monster heels that they have going are going to be Gunther and Solo. That's who they're building around to be their monster heels for the next decade. And I could see it. I could definitely see it with Gunther.
Mike Rainey said, Gunther versus Cody for the title. It doesn't matter who holds the title. That's the match I want to see.
That's the match I want to see. We got a taste of it at the Royal Rumble. I would love to see Cody Rhodes versus Gunther. I mean, granted, I'd watch Gunther. I would actually watch the blow-up doll fight Gunther. Because he's not going to make it look stupid. I don't think he would. Well, first of all, I don't think he would be stupid enough to do it. That's regardless. But I think that he would have a better match with the blow-up doll than anybody else would.
Yeah.
Plus, with Gunther, you have so many different opportunities because he can work with everybody. Everybody and anybody. People want to see Gunther and Roman. If you really want to turn Roman face, there's your heel to do it with. Not Cody Rhodes. It's Gunther. It could be his cousin Solo. And if you really want to, if they want to do something to maybe freshen up, I think it's Zilla Fatu. I think that's Umanga's son that was working with Booker T, is now a free agent because of creative differences. You could bring him in. You could bring in a new face of the bloodline. Or go talk to Jacob Fatu. There's other members you could do. If you really want to do it and you really want to freshen it up, you got to bring in somebody new. Don't keep bringing up this. Don't keep bringing back Jimmy Uso after he. It's just come on, really. That's my thing. If they're gonna try to do something to resurrect the bloodline, that's the way to do it. But if you really want to, Cody's your biggest face right now. Yeah, I know a lot of people have been saying it like he needs to turn heel after he wins the title. Why? Why does he have to do it?
I don't think he has to. I think it would just be interesting storyline-wise that him turning heel specifically because my dad couldn't get the job done because he was trying to do it a certain way. I couldn't get it done when I was trying to do it the same way my dad did. I don't think he needs to turn heel. I just think it would be an interesting caveat to the story. And
I'm not saying that, it's you saying that he should turn heel. I've heard a lot of people. I mean, even some of the, I think it was Booker T said that he needs to turn heel. There was a couple of guys, and I think Kevin Nash, even though Kevin Nash can go shut his mouth. Although I did watch, The Longest Yard was on last weekend, and I ended up watching. I love The Longest Yard. It's such a good movie. It's such a good movie. Kevin Nash was the funniest person in that entire movie too, but he needs to just kind of shut his mouth in regards to LA Knight, okay? Kevin Nash, people would probably take you a lot more serious, Kevin Nash, if when you were WWF champion, you actually main evented the WrestleMania you were WWF champion in. When Shawn Michaels won the Royal Rumble from the number 1 spot. And you guys didn't. And you know who did? Lawrence fucking Taylor. A football player.
Bam Bam Bigelow.
With Bam Bam Bigelow. But Bam Bam Bigelow was somebody who was well deserving of a WrestleMania main event. And the best part was I was there. I got to see Lawrence Taylor main event WrestleMania over Kevin Nash.
You got to see Jenny McCarthy and Pamela Anderson.
That almost made up for the fact that Roddy Piper single-handedly ruined the worst match of the night, which had the potential to be one of the best matches of the night. And you can't tell me otherwise. Considering the fact that JEFFJARRETT wrestled that night, as did Jacob and Eli Blue.
Yeah. You got to see Lex Luger too, and British Bulldog.
Lex Luger has become a treasure for the Brainless One. I have not realized how much of a fan of cheeseburgers that man has become since he retired.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. What were they called too when they had that?
I believe they were the Allied Powers.
The Allied Powers. Yes. They were the first match too. Lex and the Bulldog versus Jacob and Eli Blue. And leave it to WWE to put the makeshift tag team over against the undefeated heel tag team.
All right, Tim says, I think they want to have Roman do a face run with the title next year. He fights Rock anoints him in respect, and off he goes. And then Tim says, LA Knight is the biggest face right now, not Cody. Yeah?
Yeah. There's another thing. Hold on. And the thought crossed my mind, but then again, I'm brainless and, I live the gimmick better than anybody else. I'm sorry. I love Dwayne. Dwayne is a very entertaining. He is literally the most electrifying man in all of sports entertainment. He got over 100 million views this past Friday on SmackDown when he came out, which was awesome, by the way. But we talked about that last week on Saturday.
Yeah.
But that, to me, if The Rock wrestles Roman Reigns for the title next year at WrestleMania, is the ultimate slap in the face to Cody Rhodes. If you wanted to anoint him the biggest face and one of your new biggest stars that you're trying to promote in WWE. Not a good look. I'm sorry. And on top of that, how does this look to the people who are in AEW, who are thinking about whose contracts are coming up, like the MJFs? Guys like Ricky Starks, who you can very much convince to come to WWE because he is really good friends with Cody Rhodes. Guys like Wardlow. Guys like Hobbs. Guys who are not getting the chance and the opportunity in AEW who might be looking for a jump. And right now, they're only kind of, what they can see of an AEW star in WWE, they have is Cody. What does that say to them as impending free agents if Cody Rhodes, who was, the red carpet, Vince McMahon and Bruce Pritchard came to his house in Georgia to talk him to come back to WWE? And what are you going to do? You're going to put him back as Stardust in 2 years? And then The Rock, a Hollywood star, is going to be the one that gets the shot against him at WrestleMania? So we can continue on and drag out this story? If you're Ricky Starks, are you going to want to go into that? I'm going to get pushed over, kind of like what he's been doing now, where he won the Owen Hart tournament, and then he gets suspended, and then ends up, and fights and loses to Daniel Bryanson. And these are guys that can very much. MJF is very much in play. MJF is probably I'm starting to believe it now. He is the biggest free agent in wrestling history. Because how many?
Since Hulk Hogan signed in 1994.
I'll give it okay. Since Hogan in '94, and that was literally 30 years. Almost,
literally.
Yeah, 30-year difference. How many people? And Hogan was what, in his late 30s or 40s at that point?
At that point, he was in his 40s.
MJF is like 26 or 28. He's on the right side of 30. And he's going to be available as a free agent. Yes, he is the AEW champion, but eventually that's going to come to an end. There's somebody who's going to be turning heel. It's going to be Adam Cole, baby. That is going to be, when that unfolds, I actually kind of want to see that. I know I'm shunning AEW. I kind of want to see that. I want to see how that kind of unfolds when Adam Cole does turn on MJF, because it's going to happen.
Mm.
And if it happens before January, MJF comes out with the Royal Rumble.
Okay. That means he has to lose the title in the next couple of months.
Yes.
All that being said, Chris Brown, I saw Kevin Nash bashing Dwayne for being selfish and taking someone else's spot. Roman versus Roman made me sick. Who the fuck is Nash to talk about stealing other wrestlers' spots? Now, this is something that I kind of touched on Wednesday, because Jeff Jarrett came out saying stuff like this. Dave Lagana said similar things. The Rock does not need to show up in WWE. Got plenty of money.
Oh, yeah.
Get plenty of accolades. Has a very nice, beautiful life here in the Commonwealth of Virginia. He doesn't need to show up. He doesn't need the accolades. As much as he clearly loves being in front of the crowd, he doesn't show up that often. And when he does, guess what? It's a big effing deal. Remember when Omos and Brock Lesnar were building for their story at WrestleMania? And there was that stare down, that face-to-face they had where Omos really went over on Brock, and you're like going, oh crap, yeah, he's a big dude, and
he did the fist, right? I tried to do the Andre to Bob Uecker. It was Omos's fist to his head, and I remember
that video got 2 million views, and WWE went on and on about it. 2 million. The Rock got 50 times that by showing up on SmackDown. It isn't even a WrestleMania program. He just showed up because he felt like it. It's not selfish. The crowd wants what they want. If he was selfish, he would show up every year and take a main event spot because he could. He hasn't showed up and main evented WrestleMania in 10 years. He showed up at WrestleMania 32 and defeated Captain Wedgie. That wasn't a match. He has showed up to legit have a match once in the last 10 years. No, Kevin Nash. He is not trying to take a spot, and he's not being selfish. He is trying to take his stardom and shine it on even brighter, whether it's his cousin or, in this case, a guy that they have high hopes for. A guy who has definitely gotten better on the microphone. He still has a derp face.
Yeah, they got to put a mask on him or something.
But all that being said, this was not selfish at all. He made Austin Theory a bigger star just by being in the ring with him.
Yep.
It's unselfish. So anybody who comes out and says when Jeff Jarrett said it, I'm like going, you know what it feels? It feels like jealousy and bitterness. Because all Jeff Jarrett drew was $30.
And that's another thing with Jeff Jarrett. Why is he coming out and saying anything? I watched that Texas Chainsaw Massacre match he had with Jeff Hardy. Come the fuck on. Are you kidding me? It's just, come on. I can't say.
Chris Brown has a great idea. Austin Theory can ask Cody for a paper bag.
No, because it would be just like, fall off in the middle of a match. Oh, so they could, maybe if they did it, they'd have to change his name to Ugly Austin. Hi, Ugly Austin. Ugly Austin, why are you so goddamn ugly? To all the South Park fans out there, I hope you get the reference.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Tim says, do you guys ever think you would run into The Rock at a Virginia Home Depot? No. But, and Tim, you will have a great appreciation for this. Cousin Colin has a better opportunity of seeing The Rock at a Virginia Home Depot because The Rock lives closer to Cousin Colin than he does to Cousin Bobby or me.
Dwayne. Although we had, up until a couple of years ago, we had a better chance of seeing Mickey James.
Yeah.
Because Richmond's not too terribly far from where we are.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah. Yeah, so and I'll circle all the way back to Plateaued. Are you kidding me?
Yes.
Plateaued. Hey, pal, it hasn't been as good since I left. Oh, you're full of crap, you old crusty effer.
I should come up with my next list of top 100 ideas that Vince McMahon came up with that were stupid. So that I could put like Katie Vick and Brawl for All and all the other stupid shit.
Greg the Bunny. Actually, Brawl for All was Vince Russo. You can't even blame it on Vince. Vince just gave okay, yeah, we can do this.
Exactly my point, Jay. Because even if Vince Russo,
puke.
Every time Vince Russo came up with an idea, they could have just said no. Eventually, if Vince McMahon signs off on it, Vince McMahon is just as responsible as Vince Russo. It's not anybody else's fault that Vince Russo has the intelligence of this pen. I'm sorry, Penn. I did not mean to disrespect you that way. But come on. Elias wasn't even Elias anymore. He was Ezekiel.
And Ezekiel eventually, Elias came out and said, oh, by the way, I was Ezekiel.
Well. 2 in the pink and 1 in the stink. That's called the shotgun.
Yeah.
Woo!
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, the whole Vince McMahon plateauing and everything. This is why TKO needs to TKO him out of the company. Because the company has done so much better with Triple H in charge of creative, with Nick Khan kind of running the ship, when Stephanie McMahon was the actual CEO and the head of the board. If they were smart, and apparently, because I've heard this from other people outside of professional wrestling saying the guy, the CEO of the company that Ariel Helwani, I think it is, or whatever his name.
No, Helwani is the dude who's the reporter, but Ariel is his name, though.
Yeah, Ariel something, whatever. He's apparently like this famous, successful agent in sports.
He referred to Vince McMahon as a mentor to him, and he actually says that Vince helped him grow UFC and some of the stuff that they had done over the years. I mean, it does make sense that Vince, like in selling the company that, you know, his dad built it to a certain level, but I mean, Vince turned it into a global empire. As he curls his mustache.
Shit, I think that top 10 list, and I didn't even think of that as one of the top 10 things, like what ifs. Like, what if Vince McMahon just kept all of wrestling territorial?
Well, you know, you did mention the top 10 list, brainless one. Do you want to get into the top 10 what ifs in wrestling history?
Since it was specially requested by Chris Brown, is he here to listen to the top 10? And if anybody else has a top 10 list you want the brainless one to do, please send them in. I am always looking for ideas for top 10 lists. And I'm going to get back to meme. I know I missed a couple of weeks. I've been kind of running around like a banshee. I'm hoping that I can get memes back up on Meme Monday this week. I've just been kind of dashing doors like I'm Cody Rhodes.
Oh, use smoking mirrors.
So I'll be honest with you, Jay. This was a very interesting list. And I'll tell you, like, once I came up with like my first handful in my top 10, it really got hard. I'm like, wow. I'm like, I can't choose. And I'm like, this is getting to be kind of nitpicking and all this stuff. So so 6 through 10, I probably could have gone with different ones, but these are ones that really kind of stuck with me as like a personal thing for my top 10. But the top 5 are probably the biggest ones I could think of.
Okay.
So here it is, the top 10 what ifs in wrestling history according to Uno Brainless. Number 10, Cousin Jay. What if Mr. Kennedy did not lose the Money in the Bank briefcase due to injury? Number 9. This one's a good one, actually. Number 9. The Mauler of Meatloaf. Cousin Jay, what if Cassius Ohno was in the Shield instead of Roman Reigns?
They would not have been the PWI top 3 this year.
No, you're right. Cassius Ohno, I don't even think he even cracked the top 1,000. So,
yeah, I mean, top 1 in catering.
Yeah, the only thing he top 500 in was the amount of Golden Corrals he's been to.
Boom.
Number 8, Cousin Jay. What if William Regal never tested positive for performance-enhancing drugs after winning the King of the Ring about well over a decade ago?
I loved when he turned off the lights on the audience.
Yes. We have loved that for many years on this podcast. Number 7, this one kind of hits a little close to home. What if CM Punk had just re-signed like a good soldier back in 2011? We never got the pipe bomb in that moment at Money in the Bank, 2011. Cousin Jay, when it comes to what ifs, that is the easiest one to answer. If we had never gotten the Summer of Punk in 2011, we would have gotten what we really deserved to have gotten, which was the Summer of R-Truth in 2011. I love Phil Brooks. I love Pepsi Phil, CM Punk. I would love to see him back in WWE. I 100% side with him over everything else that Twinkle Toes and the Young Cucks have done in AEW. But that is one thing I will never, ever, ever forgive Pepsi Phil for. Costing everybody the greatest summer in wrestling history.
Yes.
Number 6, Cousin Jay, what happens if WWE did not future endeavor Cody Rhodes in 2016? We never would have gotten AEW. We wouldn't be having Jon Moxley blading himself on a nightly basis and wrestling against a bunch of jabronis. We don't
or getting dropped on his head a couple times.
We'll get into that in a little bit after this.
Mm.
But I just think about that. If Cody Rhodes, that's got to be a top one right there. I might have undersold it at 6, but I mean that's pretty big.
Huge.
And speaking of big, number 5, Cousin Jay, what if Scott Hall and Kevin Nash never left WWF to go to WCW? Never would have gotten the NWO, or if we did, we would have gotten the NWO, which would have been Hulk Hogan, the Nasty Boys, and the Boogeyman.
I'm gonna get you.
Or the Boogie Dude, or whatever it was that they did with the
Booty Man?
The Booty Man. I'm sorry. Thank you. The Boogeyman.
The Boogeyman was WWE.
Yes, I remember. One of the worst matches in WrestleMania history when he shoved the worms down Charmel. That's why Booker T got such a raw deal at WrestleManias. Ugh. Breaks my heart because I love Booker T so much.
Yeah.
Number 4, Cousin Jay, what if the Montreal Screwjob never happened? And they just let Bret Hart drop the title when he said he was going to drop the title. In my heart of hearts, I really don't think Bret Hart was going to do to the WWF Championship what Medusa did to the Women's Championship on Nitro. Sorry. I've been a fan of Bret Hart's for a very long time. I find it hard to believe that he would have done something like that.
Right.
There's no way Stu Hart's son would have done that. I'm sorry. All right, Cousin Jay, number 3. I know how you feel about this. I know how I feel about this. This has been probably, of all the things in this top 10 list, has been mentioned the most.
Okay.
What if John Cena at the SummerSlam in 2010 put over the Nexus?
Wade Barrett might still be wrestling. But then we probably don't get Bad News Barrett, which I enjoyed.
We might not have gotten Bryan Danielson either, or Daniel Bryan.
Right.
It was funny, too, because originally I was going to put what if Daniel Bryan had just been fired in 2010 and not brought back. But then I was like, nah, the Nexus is more hurtful for me. Because Daniel Bryan could have won that match in 2010 by himself, and it would have made a lot more sense. I would have been more forgiving if Daniel Bryan was the one that no-sold the DDT outside the ring than John Cena. Because it would have been a gutsy performance by the young up-and-coming star who's about to take over WWE by storm.
You know who didn't no-sell a DDT was Timmy's brother, Teddy. He took it like a champ.
I took a DDT once, and I don't remember much after it.
Yeah.
Didn't realize you were supposed to, yeah, I was Moxley that day. Number 2, Cousin Jay. What if, in January of 1999, if Tony Schiavone had not mentioned that Mick Foley was about to win the WWF Championship on Monday Night Raw?
Yeah, that'll put butts in the seats.
AKA the turning point in the Monday Night Wars.
The last time WCW... Actually, I think it was the first time in 83 weeks WWF had beaten WCW.
That is the reason why Mick Foley is God. And do you want to take a guess at what you think my number 1 is, or have an idea of who might be involved in my number 1?
Owen Hart.
Cousin Jay, what if Owen Hart was never the Blue Blazer? I could have been more morbid about it, but I decided to keep it as PG as possible.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry. If it wasn't the Blue Blazer, if Vince didn't want him to do the stupid stunt, if they didn't want to try to save a couple of seconds by making it as unsafe as humanly possible, and Owen Hart was still with us today, I am still convinced in my heart of hearts that with the incoming wrestlers, Eddie Guerrero, the big piece, Voldemort of professional wrestling,
redacted,
and the goat of goats, who has goated more than goats have ever goated in the history of Goatdom, who Owen Hart happens to be his favorite wrestler and his idol, Chris Jericho. Owen Hart would have had a career resurgence in the late 90s, early 2000s, and it would have been wonderful. We missed out on what would have been the greatest television in history the first time Chris Jericho and Owen Hart had a face-to-face with microphones.
Yeah. There are a couple other things here people have commented with as far as what ifs. What if Curtis Axel became a Paul Heyman guy that was over? What if Curtis Axel was actually eliminated from the Royal Rumble?
Stop, because I don't know what for 327 episodes of this podcast would be if it wasn't for the fact that F and Mark's Hall of Fame is still in the 2015. I can't, Jay. Great. Who posted that? I need to know who posted that.
It was Tim.
Timmy, I just want you to know.
Mark's Hall of Famer Tim.
Timmy, I just want you to know I will be having a sleepless night tonight thinking about the fact that Curtis Axel was actually eliminated from the 2015 Royal Rumble. I'm not going to sleep tonight. I'm going to be in bed all night staring at the ceiling thinking about that.
Tim also brought up something kind of close to what you're talking about. What if Kevin Owens and Chris Jericho did not break up? You know, you talked about somebody who loved Owen Hart. You got two people there who loved Owen Hart, and they loved each other. They even had a painting with them touching each other. Their fingers, just like on the Sistine Chapel.
I understand. But at the grand scheme of things, of all the years that I've been watching WWE, I've been watching WWE since before Monday Night Raw was even a thing. So I've watched 30 plus years of Monday Night Raw. The Festival of Friendship is a top 10 moment in Monday Night Raw history. So if they had not broken up, we never would have gotten that with the wonderful picture and all that stuff.
Yes. All right. Tim also had, what if Owen Hart never dropped I'm sorry, this is Chris Brown. What if Owen Hart did not drop Stone Cold Steve Austin on his head?
I was going to put that on the list. I didn't want to put Owen on there twice. No, sorry. People might forget Steve Austin could actually wrestle before he broke his neck in that match. Steve could actually go. But after he broke his neck, they wanted to play it safe with him. And instead of him taking a lot of these bumps and doing a lot of crazy shit, they just made him the ass kicker. Granted, with his character, it worked. But we could have gotten a hell of a lot longer out of Steve Austin. That one bothers me. Because I was thinking about that. Or what if Steve Austin had not joined forces with Vince McMahon at WrestleMania 17? I probably would have gotten more of Heidenreich in my life, but that's about it. I wouldn't have missed all of Chris Nowinski's entire career. On the flip side, though, I do have to thank Vince McMahon for having Steve Austin join forces with him, because I miss Billy and Chuck and Katie Vick, and I don't regret missing both of those.
Yeah.
But yeah, some of those yeah. God damn it! Now I'm gonna be thinking about Curtis Axel being eliminated in 2015 Royal Rumble. I don't know who will be here for 3,162 days. What have we even done, Jay? What would we have done? We're not going to put Hornswoggle.
No. We're not going to put Mil Masteris.
I got that 97 Royal Rumble. He eliminated himself. I know for a fact that man is not alive in the 1997 Royal Rumble.
Yeah.
He literally eliminated himself because he was so much of an ego-driven dude that he couldn't let somebody eliminate him from a Royal Rumble.
Chris Brown is asking, who has that painting, I wonder, of Jericho and Kevin Owens?
You could ask Top Dollar. I'm sure he's got a lot of free time on his hands.
Sad.
Which is a shame because I actually like Top Dollar, and it's mainly because of the fact that he once upon a time played for the Giants for like a cup of coffee. That and that show, the collection show that they did, the where they were trying to find all the collectible stuff from the years of wrestling. He was so good as the host on that. I'm really upset that they actually let him go. Damn it.
So we did mention Stone Cold Steve Austin getting dropped on his head by Owen Hart. Now we can fast forward to Dynamite on Wednesday, where one Jonathan Moxley got dropped on his head not once, but twice.
You're welcome. I have a quick question before we dive into this.
Yeah?
When you asked me earlier today about if I was going to have a TISM, out of curiosity, what part of this week was I supposed to possibly have a TISM on?
There were several things that I thought were possible TISM realm, but quite honestly, I was more leaning towards like, let's lay off all these people and sign this historically big deal on the same exact day and announce both of them simultaneously almost.
Honestly, I could have, but I looked at the list of the wrestlers, and like I said, other than like Shelton Benjamin and Top Dollar and Elias.
News, according to Mike Rainey, Matt Riddle has been released. Release number 23. I'm not happy that Matt Riddle is released, but it's necessary.
Yeah.
I hope he gets his shit together.
Like I said, I think it was last week or the week before when we were talking about this with Matt Riddle. Like I said, this is, Drew McIntyre and Jinder Mahal both said it in the 3MB Table for Three, which, by the way, I missed that on the network. That was one of my favorite shows on the network. They said that them getting released was the best thing that ever happened to not just their careers, but their lives. And I'm hoping that WWE releasing Bro is the wake-up call that Matt Riddle needs. And please, 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 I know that I am shunning AEW. Tony Khan, I will tweet at you if I have to. Please do not sign Matt Riddle. Let the man get his shit together. You already kind of fucked up by doing the same thing with Jeff Hardy. The last thing you need to do is bring Matt Riddle into this equation. Although it is another person that would be in the locker room that could beat the shit out of the Young Cucks and Kenny Omega, so I'd kind of be on board with it.
I want Riddle to get his crap together.
I do too.
And then after he gets his crap together, I want him and RVD to be a tag team. Wherever that happens to be.
Wow.
It may take a couple years, but RVD is still in shape, and he had a pretty good match against Jungle Jerkoff.
There was a what if that I forgot to put on my list. What if in June of 2013, if I had shown up to Webster, Mass, to the Big Time Wrestling show with F. Mark's Hall of Famer Sean O, and I had showed up with weed and smoked with Rob Van Dam? Would he have smoked with me?
Yes.
I don't know, because he just honestly, I thought about it when I first bought the tickets, and then I found out he was going back to WWE, and I said, I can't risk it. I would 100%, if he was not like WWE bound, I would have brought weed with me. 100%.
Tim put in the chat, Riddle will go into porn and go out like Herb Abrams.
Okay, I can live with that. It's either it's one end of the spectrum or the other. Either he needs to get his shit together or he needs to go Herb Abrams.
Herb Abrams. I might need to watch that Dark Side of the Ring episode again.
Still one of my all-time favorites. The one that think about this. That was the one episode of Dark Side of the Ring that had like the least build-up that people were excited about. That came out to be like the best episode.
Yeah,
that was phenomenal. Top 3 at worst for me. It was awesome. Herb Abrams. He might have to go He might have to go in our Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
But anyway, to circle back to where I could have had my tism, yes, I could have done it with the releases and everything. Right after they announced the new deal with USA for SmackDown. And I thought about it, and I said, I kind of had a hard day, and I kind of wore myself out running around like an asshole today. But then I decided to put my notes together for tonight's podcast.
Yeah.
And then when I got to there, the first thing I usually do is I go and I write my good and bad, because I usually put the date, or not the date, I usually put the episode, and I put how many days for Curtis Axel. Every week, without fail, those are the first 2 things I write on my notes. The episode and the days of Curtis Axel, and then I go good, bad, and brainless. And usually off the top of my brain, I'm like, yeah, I can come up with my good and my bad and my brainless off the thing. But usually when I start doing my notes, oh yeah, and that's how I usually get to fill up, because yes, there are things that really stick out for me during the week that I'm like, oh yeah, I got to mention that. Oh yeah, I got to mention that. But then I'm like, I got to, think about this and putting the notes together. Oh, Cousin Jay. I watched it. I watched the video because I'm not watching the show. I had to do a double take. I had to watch it at least 4 or 5 times to actually kind of comprehend what I had witnessed. He was dropped on his head twice. He was dropped on his head the first time, and the referee went to count 1, 2, 3, and because Moxley didn't, he let me get this straight. A dude gets dropped on his head. His opponent covers him. The referee stops it because Moxley was supposed to kick out, but because Moxley was concussed, he wasn't able to do it. Tells the referee to do an audible. Ray Phoenix hears it, and his idea after dropping him on his head the first time was, let's replicate the same move I just did to him again, and oh, by the way, I'm going to drop him on his head again. And we do a title change. This just goes to show you, why did you take your title off your greatest champion, Tony Khan? This is your fault, Tony. You had your great champion in Orange Cassidy, and he was doing great things with the International Championship. Why? Why did you take the title off of him and put it on the fucking plumber? He hasn't even had the title for a month. Now that championship's going to get hot potatoed, just like you did to the TNT title. And Christian is doing everything in his power to rebuild that championship back to where it was when Cody Rhodes had it. You put the International Championship on Mox, and he does the stupid matches every single week. And yes, I know that there's been a lot of history between the Death Triangle guys, the Lucha Brothers, with Ray Phoenix and Pentagon. It seems like every year since 2019, they've had some kind of thing going on with Jon Moxley. So you do this match, and he drops him on his head and concusses him. So Tony Khan, I put the blame on you for that. But man, Rich Knox, the referee for this match, are you fucking kidding me? Are you that fucking stupid? Maybe I'm not the one who should be called the brainless one. Maybe you should be the one that's called the brainless one. Because it doesn't take more than a half a brain cell to realize that somebody is kind of in a bad spot. But let's just keep it going. What was Ray Phoenix thinking? What was Ray Phoenix thinking after he dropped him on his head? His idea for an audible was, let's do the same move again. I have my opinions about Jon Moxley. I don't want to see Jon Moxley become a vegetable. I don't want to see that. I like Jon Moxley too much. I love Dean Ambrose. He was one of my favorites in WWE. I don't need this. I keep saying the things about how it's going to take for AEW is going to be screwed when somebody finally dies in the ring. And here we are 4 years later, and it's getting likely. It's getting likelier and likelier. We're going to get to a point where AEW is not going to exist because Moxley's going to get dropped on his head and die in the ring, or MJF's going to get dropped on his head and die in the ring, or one of these wrestlers is going to get dropped on their head and die in the ring. It's going to happen.
Darby,
I don't want it to happen, Jay. I don't need that. We got way too close to that 24 years ago. We were this close to watching Owen Hart die. I think about that a lot as a wrestling fan. It's bothersome, especially after the fact that Vince McMahon kept the show going after the poor man died in his ring. But it's going to happen. Everything happens at least once. That's how human nature is. I don't need to see that. This part of the reason why I can't watch it anymore. Because here we are 4 years later of the company who has been talked about for years. People go on their podcasts and say it. Wrestling journalists say it. It is not a safe environment. They need a performance center. They need somewhere where they could train these people properly. Because you got these people who are going to these B-rate, C-rate, Q-rated freaking wrestling academies and trying to learn from,
QT Marshall.
I say what I say about QT Marshall. The factory, the Nightmare Factory is actually a really good school, and he teaches there. I'll say what I say about QT Marshall. The dude can actually train wrestlers. I'll give him that. I just don't need to see him on my television ever. And he's got a punchable face. It's just something about his face. I want to knock all of his teeth out and make him rich by the Tooth Fairy. Dwayne. But I don't know, Jake. I don't know what this is. I don't know. What is this?
And they tried to spin it, too, trying to say that Moxley got concussed during the pre-match brawl, and he was concussed during the whole match. That's what they've been trying to say, and trying to save face for Rey Fenix. You know what?
Oh.
The stuff that happened, let's say when Tyson Kidd ended up almost dying in the ring because he took the muscle buster, Samoa Joe didn't run from that. It's like going, hey, man, this shit happens. Tyson Kidd is still alive. Tyson Kidd is still able to have a good life. He's not able to wrestle anymore. It really sucks.
On the flip side, though, and I'm not saying it does suck that he lost his wrestling career, but him producing a lot of the women's matches over the years. Tell me some of these. I mean, he produced the Becky and Trish steel cage match.
Right.
I'm pretty sure that he did the one for Rhea Ripley and Charlotte at WrestleMania this year. Tyson Kidd is as much as it sucks that Bret Hart's Paperboy is no longer able to wrestle in the ring. He is doing incredible things backstage and is just as important to the evolution of the women's division in WWE as any of the women performers because he's done so much for them as a producer and as a trainer. But here we are. So the fact that he got the concussion in the brawl before the match, that makes it look that much better. So what you're telling me is that you sent a concussed man out there to wrestle in a wrestling match, and a concussed man who should not have been in the ring got dropped on his head twice. A man who just recently did an interview and said that he went to the doctor a couple years ago, and they said that he has the arthritis of a 70-year-old man. This man has a young daughter at home and a wife. Come on. Jay, they make it harder and harder for me to try to watch that crap every single week. Come on. It's going to happen. Just like I'm convinced that all schools are going to be virtual learning in 7 years. It was 10 years or less last year, but I've seen the way that the bus drivers have been driving down Hampton Road, so I've knocked a couple years off.
Okay. All right. Very important question from F and Mark's Hall of Famer Tim. More punchable face, Austin Theory or QT Marshall?
So you're asking. So the question is, if I had the chance to punch one of the two in the face, who would I choose?
Yes.
QT Marshall.
All right. You are not in agreement with Chris Brown. F and Mark's Hall of Famer Chris Brown saying Theory by country mile.
I'm pretty sure if we asked El Jefe, he would say the same thing. I'm probably in the minority on that. I'm sure a lot more people would want to punch Austin Theory in the face than QT Marshall. I'll say this. I know that he's got a punchable face. Austin Theory is the future of WWE. He is a tremendous in-ring performer. I enjoy his work as a wrestler. I just can't stand his face and the way he talks and the way he carries himself. I just can't. And I keep seeing these notifications from F and Mark's Hall of Famer El Jefe. I'm now convinced that he is also telling us that the Bro has been released by WWE.
Not only the Bro has been released, but he probably is saying, I have a theory.
This guy sucks. Oh, he must be out in the ring right now then.
Tim says AJ Styles needs another soccer mom haircut. That's probably true. Like, I think he's let his beard and the hair grow out a little bit too much. He needs to get that iron out, and he needs to get that hair straightened even more.
I'm going to have to disagree. As somebody who has been doing a phenomenal job growing out his beard, the longer the better. I'm almost at Captain Lou Albano braiding my beard level.
Yeah.
I'm hoping that when it gets to it in like a couple of weeks, I'm gonna come on the podcast as Captain Lou with the rolled up beard.
Are you going to put the elastic bands in your beard?
It might be elastic bands, or it's going to be whatever the stuff that they put their hair in the ponytail. Women,
right? Yeah. All right.
Hair ties. Thank you. That's the word I was thinking of. Hair ties. It took me a little bit.
All right. So another thing that came out this week, that's what she said, was that Randy Orton has been at the Performance Center. Randy Orton, who has been advised by doctors not to wrestle ever again. The dude is going to wrestle again. And if you're looking for someone to stem the tide from Cody finishing the story at WrestleMania 40, look no further than the Viper. I think, quite honestly, if he comes back, and I think he'll come back relatively soon, I want to see him in a tag team with Cody Rhodes. Get him to get a little bit more into ring shape and get him to not take as many bumps and kind of build his body back up to be able to take a few more bumps. And then sometime around the Royal Rumble, he turns on Cody because he's a damn snake. He's the damn Viper, and you can't trust them. He does away with the RKO because, as I've stated many times on this podcast, he could do the most dastardly thing ever, even worse than what Vince McMahon does. But if he does the RKO, within a couple weeks, the crowd does not give a crap that he might have just stabbed somebody in the heart in front of them and killed the person. They're like, we love the RKO.
Yep.
Keep doing that. You are a face. We love you. We love Randy Orton. He needs to get the skull pump back and do it in a way that's safe where he's not going to give somebody a concussion.
So basically, he's just got to kick somebody like he's not Rey Fenix. Got it.
Yes.
Because if Rey Fenix was punting people in the skull, Jon Moxley would have his fourth concussion in a week.
Yes.
I'm happy. I'm happy because I love Randy Orton. I want to see him back. And he is the one person that if you're not going to finish the story with Roman Reigns, you could do it with Randy Orton instead, and it would still probably make more sense to have.
And you would continue the story, and then when you wouldn't feel gypped.
Yeah.
At WrestleMania 40, not seeing, kind of the conclusion to this, you're like going, yeah, you know what? This is a logical progression. He goes through these various legends before he gets, to the big boss at the end again.
Right. I could see it. Yeah. I'm happy for Randy Orton. Speaking of people who were at the WWE Performance Center this week, Randy Orton wasn't the only one that was there.
Yeah.
One Jade Cargill was seen at the WWE Performance Center. Jade Cargill is now the second big name star that they have been able to bring over from AEW. Jay, what are your thoughts about Jade Cargill being in the Performance Center?
Good for her. She's a mother. She just got into wrestling a couple of years ago. She has a unique look. And if you're trying to have a sustained women's division with a bunch of top talent who are unique, she's perfect. She fits in perfectly with what they want.
Right.
If we've learned anything from Tony Khan, he cannot book large wrestlers. If they're above, the size of Marco Stunt, he has a problem.
No, it's just if they're bigger than Kenny Omega, or if they can't, or no, if they could beat up Kenny Omega, that's it.
But you got a guy like Wardlow, and quite honestly, at this point, I hope his contract ends, and I hope he ends up in WWE because at least Triple H could see the value in him. I mean, Jim Ross has spoken highly of Wardlow and said, hey, this is a guy that should be a main eventer and we should be building around. And they built him up to a certain level. And quite honestly, when you're talking about the legacy of the TNT title and the people who had it, there was nothing wrong with the TNT title until the end of Wardlow's first reign.
Yeah.
Absolutely nothing wrong with it. And then after that, then it was like, oh, whoever wants it this week gets it.
Wait, are we in somebody's hometown? Let's make them TNT champion.
Right. Jade Cargill will be able to make more money in WWE than she will in AEW. They treat the women's division at least a bit better. They get high-profile matches and are put in high-profile spots that actually mean something. And she already had that little thing on Twitter, formerly Twitter, now X, with Charlotte Flair. And I actually would love to see Charlotte versus Jade as something that could actually build up Jade to bring her into, a title picture at some point. I hope it's not Charlotte with her 37th reign as heavyweight champion.
Before the age of 40.
Right. But I like the signing. I think it's good for Jade. Again, it's like, hey, she is a working mom. You get the money you could get while you could get it. And we'll see how they build her and what they do. I think they could do a great job because that WWE, film crew can really put together some great vignettes to make her a big deal. They're not going to be able to get footage from AEW, but you already have, again, she is a tall woman who's sculpted, who has an extremely unique look. They could do a ton of stuff with that without even having her show her in-ring ability.
I am a huge fan of hers. I've enjoyed her work when the way they booked her over in AEW, the way that she was the TBS champion. And it just kind of, and we talked about it. I know I've definitely talked about it on the podcast on more than one occasion, how they hot potatoed the TNT title 309 times in the time Jade Cargill won it and then lost it. It was like 13 or 15 title changes that happened with the TNT while she was TBS champion.
Right.
She has the look. She's got the presentation about her. She can talk on the microphone. If she goes down to the Performance Center, maybe spend a little time in NXT. I know that they were saying that the contract she signed is a main roster contract, and they could see her jumping right to the main roster. She's okay in the ring. She could get a lot better. And if she can get the proper training down in the Performance Center, she is somebody that they can definitely, because she's only 31. She is only 31 years old. They can definitely, because like everything, she's got everything else. She just has to get the wrestling ability just a little bit better. They just got to get the, smooth out the edges, so to speak, with her.
Yeah.
And if they can present her the right way, and believe me, you and I have been talking about it for years, nobody out presentations the WWE. They know how to showcase their people. That's why they keep bringing people. For the most part.
For the most part. We're not going to talk about the 2016 Royal Rumble or the 2020 Royal Rumble.
Yes,
when there might have been some wood that was right off to the side in the production truck, may have distracted somebody from actually presenting the people appropriately. Now, if it's not left to the vices of the Bucktooth Beaver, they are presented in mostly a good way.
Now, hold on. I might be able to clear Bucky Beaver on the 2016 Royal Rumble. Apparently, when he was in the truck and AJ Styles was coming out, somebody that was in the truck with him was so excited to see, or so surprised to see AJ Styles, that they said "damn," and he thought they were talking about the actual "damn" and not AJ Styles. So he kind of
fired.
It is not confirmed nor denied whether or not that person was future endeavored or not.
Okay.
But that is the reason why they don't go anywhere near the Hoover Dam, because they're afraid that Kevin Dunn will never show up for whatever show they're shooting.
Okay. Is that why they don't go to Niagara Falls much? Because he would take that as a great challenge.
I wish he would go and challenge by building a dam at Niagara Falls. Right at the edge of the falls, too.
All right, Chris Brown asking, when Jade makes her main roster debut, who is her ideal first opponent?
I'm not sure who I'd like to see for her first ideal opponent. The three people I want to see her work with more than anybody else is, like you said, Charlotte is on that list. I think they've already kind of planted that seed. It'd be kind of foolish for her to kind of work with Charlotte that quickly, because if you're going to try to make her out to be a big deal, she can't lose right off the bat. That's what they did with Taya Valkyrie in AEW, and she hasn't done shit.
Yeah.
She's kind of fallen flat, like a lot of people have in AEW. Another person I'd like to see her work with is Bianca Belair, just because I think that they would work very well together. Bianca is very, very strong. I love Bianca. She's one of my favorites.
Yep.
And I think that her and Jade would work well together. And the person I would love to see her more than anybody else is Rhea Ripley, because I think they would have a lot. That would be a really good matchup. Really, just the thought of those two standing face to face. Oh. Especially now with Rhea Ripley coming out and saying that she wants to wrestle some of the dudes. So you get somebody like Jade Cargill, who's like, aesthetically she matches up with Rhea Ripley. I think it'd be great to see who she works with first. I'm not sure.
You know what name I wouldn't mind seeing her work with first? And I know they've been trying to build her up, but she's also 43 years old. Shayna Baszler. I think they built up Shayna enough where she is not a top-level star. And quite honestly, I don't think she'll ever be a top-level star, but she's got enough credibility that if Jade goes in the ring with her and beats her in a pretty convincing fashion, I think that would be a good starting point for her to be something important in the division, because she can't be going against Nia Jax anytime soon. She can't be going against Becky Lynch anytime soon. If Trish was like, all right, I'm finishing up my current run in WWE. I did my thing with Becky. If they want to possibly have her go against Trish Stratus, that could be a thing. But even that, I would say probably not, because Trish probably needs to have more going on with Zoe Starks, Ricky Stark's sister.
I got it. I know who she could work with. if they're gonna bring her in like a heel like she was in AEW, or I'm pretty sure she was a heel in AEW. It's kind of hard to tell what is what in AEW because they actually cheered Plumber Mox before he got concussed. Right. But if you're going to bring her in as a heel, the perfect person for her to work with is the Rack Back. Raquel Rodriguez doesn't do anything.
Tim loves back pose.
But if anything, like honestly, like the perfect person to really work with Jade Cargill, if you want to get her best strengths out, it's Natty Neidhart. Natty did a lot of stuff for that worthless Ronda Rousey, made her look better. I think if you use Natty Neidhart as the kind of like the jumping point for Jade Cargill, or I'm sorry, Jada Parker, which is a name that has been rumored to be copyrighted or trademarked by WWE.
Okay.
I think that Natty Neidhart would be the right person to do it because she is a very experienced person. She could give you credibility with a victory over her. I think she would be the perfect person to do it. Somebody like Tegan Knox wouldn't make any sense.
All right. Chris Brown saying, personally, I'd like to see her work with Alexa Bliss or Piper Niven. Now, clearly, Alexa is going to be gone from WWE for quite a while. If Jade is coming soon, it will not be Alexa Bliss. Piper Niven, she's she's in the middle of a storyline. If we have Jade coming in to WWE soon on the main roster, Piper Niven is not going to, hit the brakes on her storyline with Chelsea Green to have a feud. Tim would like to see Maxine Dupree go over on Jade specifically because, and I quote, "Fuck you, AEW."
Yeah, fuck you, AEW. I agree.
But I think there are a few people possibly out there that she could go against. She hasn't been released yet, but you got Candice LeRae out there. If you want her to have a good match and go over, Candice is for the women. Similar to Natty, taking on the Dolph Ziggler role of "I'll make you look good." Look good.
Indy Hartwell is kind of sitting around and, doing nothing too because we have no idea what they're doing because Johnny Gargano is not around. So it's like we can't have any of them wrestle because if Johnny's not there, why have any of them wrestle?
Right. Tim saying Chelsea Green. Similar with the thing with Piper Niven is they're in the middle of a storyline between Piper and Chelsea. I think that's got to play out before we see something like that.
It also depends on what show she ends up on, too. If she ends up on Raw, you have a whole different, locker room of women to work with if she was to go to SmackDown.
Right.
I still think that I really think in my heart of hearts that she needs to go to the Performance Center for a little bit, get a little bit of training, and then spend maybe 3 to 6 months in NXT. It's not going to hurt. I think that's going to be the best route for her. Speaking of Jade Cargill, do you know who her husband is?
No.
Her husband should have won a World Series ring with the Red Sox in 2018. He is known for spending at least a dozen, may have been 15 years of his Major League Baseball career playing baseball in the state of Ohio. But I don't think he was a Tito bum. That is one Brandon Phillips.
Okay.
And the reason I say he should have won a World Series with the Red Sox in 2018 was because he hit that game-winning walk-off home run against Atlanta that was just an absolute shot, and they won that game. That was it. That was the game I was like, yeah, they're not losing the World Series.
Yeah.
And he should have gotten a World Series ring for that. Damn it. I like that dude. He was a hell of a second baseman for Cincinnati for a while.
Yeah.
Always like Brandon Phillips. So I'm happy for him and her. Maybe we'll see Brandon Phillips in WWE. It's possible.
You never know.
I wonder if El Jefe would be happy about that.
Mm.
Since he might have been a pre-Tito bum.
Right. Michael Jordan, the first Tito bum.
Fair. Probably the most famous Tito bum, too.
Yes, definitely.
And the second most famous Tito bum is none other than David Ortiz.
Yeah.
And then third was Shea Hillenbrand.
All right. Brainless one, do you have anything else to talk about before we get to the good, bad, and brainless?
Real quickly, one thing. WWE announced that the Elimination Chamber, which will be wrestled in February 24th, I believe it is, will be taking place in Australia. In the land
Good
down
day,
under.
mate.
I thought another shrimp on the barbie. This is great. I want to say it was Australia was the wrestling show that we watched a couple years ago with El Jefe when I was driving around Portsmouth at 4 o'clock in the morning looking for beer. Yeah. Yes, nothing like the being at the actual, like, I think it was 7-Eleven where I got them at like 6 o'clock or like before 6 o'clock. And sir, you know that beer sales don't happen. Oh, great. Of course they don't, because why would you guys sell them for 24 hours? Right. What do you think this is, Connecticut? You guys are going to shut me off at 9 o'clock?
Tim is referring to Santos Escobar as the male version of back pose. He does nothing for me at all. Fart sniffer.
See, I like Santos Escobar. He's kind of won me over with the way that he's been handling it with the fans. I just think he's just a genuinely good dude. He might not have like much of a personality. He's a pretty solid wrestler, but he was so much better at NXT as a character.
Right.
Because that whole thing with him, like during the COVID years, where they had that tournament for the Cruiserweight Championship, where everybody was rooting for Drake Maverick to get there, and then he got to save his job, and he got the contract anyway. Yeah, Santos Escobar was a lot more fun back then. I appreciate him as an in-ring performer, but personality-wise, he hasn't really won me over. But anyway, what are your thoughts about Australia getting Elimination Chamber?
I think it's another win for WWE, another win for Nick Khan. Having these shows at unique locations that don't often get WWE events, specifically premium live events, is going to do nothing but have a more rabid crowd, which I think just enhances the experience even for us watching on television. I mean, I go back to when they had, Backlash in Puerto Rico?
Yep.
I could hear the sounds that came through the TV. I bet it was 5 times as loud in that stadium. It's going to be loud, it's going to be boisterous, and it's going to make the Elimination Chamber, which I loved it when they first came out with it, but in the last handful of years, it's been about as dull as dishwater. They do a lot of stupid stuff and a lot of dumb booking at Elimination Chamber.
They haven't had a good Elimination Chamber since Bray Wyatt won the WWE Championship. Changed my mind.
Yeah.
We've come a long way from Edge beating up Kofi Kingston and taking his spot in the Elimination Chamber.
Right.
We've come a long way from when Chris Jericho lost the WWE Championship just to win the World Heavyweight Championship later on in the night. I think Edge did it too. I think they both did it.
All right. Tim asking a very important question. Why is Kevin Patrick always out of breath? They called me a freak. I found out this is expert investigative reporting on my part that he actually had lung replacement and he got Lars Sullivan's lungs.
Great move by Austin Theory. What did you just run a fucking 5K before you spoke?
Yeah.
Fuck.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, that was the only other thing I had on my list was Australia getting the Elimination Chamber next in a few months.
Yeah, good for them. And travel-wise, I mean, I always come back to this. I hope they tape SmackDown ahead of time that week. Thankfully, they started doing that before they go for the Blood Money shows over in Saudi Arabia the last couple times, where they actually tape ahead of time and let them not wrestle the night before and fly halfway across the world.
Unless they brought the whole SmackDown crowd, group with them, and they found a smaller arena to do SmackDown before the Elimination Chamber pay-per-view, and maybe keep a bunch of people back for Raw that you can build your Raw around, like the Miz. Maybe not take. I mean, you could take Seth Rollins and have him defend the title, or if Roman's going to defend the title there in Elimination Chamber, maybe not have Seth defend the World Heavyweight title, and he could be home for Raw. Just a thought, but possibly. I'm happy. I'm happy for them, and I'm happy Australia is getting a premium live event.
You know what I think is going to happen here is there is going to be a big opportunity for Grayson Waller, specifically there.
And Emma too. Oh wait,
Rip.
Sorry, not Rip. Released.
Released in peace.
Future endeavored. By Endeavor.
Sad.
I guess it's time for the good, the bad, and as the thing says, the brainless, with the brainless one and Cousin Jay. What do you got for your good this week?
I have to go to your wrestling spirit animal, Eddie Kingston. Putting the Ring of Honor title on him, having him defeat the man he's got problems with.
Partner.
Good for him. And a good booking decision for somebody who is constantly on cocaine. Thanks, Tony Khan. This was actually a brilliant moment. Thank you.
I know that I have put them in purgatory or they have been shunned.
This is Ring of Honor. Technically.
Eddie Kingston. I'm sorry. Eddie Kingston gets my good for this week. There's no way I couldn't give it to Eddie Kingston. I almost wanted to watch that match alone on Dynamite just because it was Eddie Kingston. Because I had a feeling.
Technically a Ring of Honor match.
And I'm so happy for Eddie. I really am. The poor guy has gone through so much. He left Impact and he went to NWA, and NWA kind of fell flat because of
Lagana.
Dave Lagana and COVID and all that stuff, and he went and got an opportunity in AEW. And it's like, how do you not root for Eddie Kingston? How could you not? I am so happy.
He hates everybody.
I am so happy for Eddie to the point where him winning the Ring of Honor title and now being Edward Two Belts is getting a nomination from the Brainless One for my mark-out moment of the year.
Yeah.
So good on my spirit animal, Edward Moore, on becoming a two-belt champion, winning the Ring of Honor World Championship. What do you got for your bad?
There was a lot of bad and brainless that went on this week, and there are many ways I could have gone. I'm hesitant to go this way. I almost want to flip-flop my bad and brainless, but I'm going to go with the whole incident with Moxley and the end of that match, where he gets dropped on his head. They call an audible. He gets dropped on his head again. Like, the fact that the referee didn't count, it's like, okay, was the referee not let in on the fact, like, what was Moxley supposed to lose? Or, like, the dude didn't get his shoulder up. As the referee, your job, like, it's the performer's job to get their shoulder up. Not for you to make sure that the shoulder, like, or make sure the count doesn't happen. So there was a lot of bad that went on with that specifically I really could have gone with that for my brainless, and I almost did make it my brainless, but there were so many errors specifically in that moment, in that match.
Okay.
Whether it be Tony Khan as the producer, did he stop the count? Say, hey, don't count him down. Was it the referee making a call on his own, like, hey, he's not supposed to go over, I shouldn't count this? And then Moxley, oh, we need to do an audible. Oh, by the way, he's got a concussion. Why should he be the one making the decision? It really could have been my brainless, but it's not. It is my bad this week.
See, my bad for this week is the WWE releases. Especially after they just announced right after the releases that even though they needed a pair, 100 people lost their job last week. Now 23, we just found out, and maybe more, have lost their jobs from the wrestling ring aspect of it. And then you go out and make this monster deal with USA. And, it's not like WWE didn't get a shit ton of money from this merger. It's not like this is a $19 billion company that can't afford to pay Madcap Moss. But it gets my bad for this week because it's bad. Because my brainless, I'm convinced that you and I have flip-flopped on bad and brainless.
Yeah, we have. My brainless is definitely WWE, and it has to do with the fact that they more or less simultaneously drop all these performers and announce that they have made this ginormous deal. I know that Endeavor had to take out loans to make the deal happen. And I know a lot of these performers were not being prominently exposed on television and probably weren't going to be prominently exposed, but I understand you own the company and it's your prerogative to hire and fire people, but it just looks so damn bad. $1.4 billion. And you're going to get more for Monday Night Raw.
Yep. And if you're not going to get
you got to drop all these people. Really? And oh, by the way, there's probably going to be a couple of performers that we really like whose contracts end up expiring. And we don't want to pay somebody that much money.
Oh, we'll let all these people go, but we'll bring back Nia Jax as well.
Ugh.
See, I'm sorry, Jay. I got a 3-way tie for my brainless.
Okay.
I have to give one brainless to Rey Fenix because you dropped a dude on his head. He was concussed, and because the referee had to kick, for whatever reason, the referee was a fucking moron. You decided to call an audible and do the exact same move and dropped him on his head. That's just careless and reckless. And now you're the international champion, and you got a whole mess of heat on you. Number 2, I give it to Rich Knox, the referee. You need to watch the wrestler and not read the script. I don't care what the script tells you and how the match is supposed to go. If you see a wrestler go down and he is basically a lifeless carcass, trying to keep the match going is not a good idea. By the way, I remember a couple of years ago during the pandemic years, they had a 4-tag team, like a fatal 4-way tag team match where I know the Young Bucks were in it. I want to say Angelico and one of those, whatever. There was a couple other tag teams, but I remember Alex Reynolds and John Silver of the Dark Order were in the match. And there was a spot in the match where I think the Bucks did the leg drop and they landed on Alex Reynolds' head. And he stayed motionless in the ring for 45 seconds. And the referee did absolutely nothing while he was in there to try to get him out. Who was the referee? Rich Knox. He needs to go.
What makes me think clearly Rich Knox is not the referee that was in that match with Team 3D when they were in Impact Wrestling when the ref was supposed to take a ref bump and they missed by a country mile hitting him, but he still took the bump anyway.
Rich Knox should not have a job. I'm sorry. And I know the fact that the only reason he has a job is because he's friends with the Young Bucks. But that's just bad. That is just bad. And on top of it, I got to give it to Tony Khan. I'm sorry. You're trying to run a wrestling organization, and you're trying not to make your dad lose money on his investment. Your dad wanted to give you this money so you can go and you can do and have fun with it and all this stuff so you could enjoy it while he was still around. You have now, for years now, been avoiding the fact that you don't have a performance center, you have untrained wrestlers, and people are getting hurt on a regular basis. To the point where
on the trampoline in the backyard.
They're also training at the Bubba Smoke Wrestling School and Barbecue Pit extravaganza, where you can get a wrestling tryout,
Daly's place,
and a tattoo and a plate of brisket at the same time. But the fact is that to a point where people are taking clips of the people getting hurt, and you're filing and having these videos taken down because it shows how negligent your stars are. And to top it off, if you were the person that said that Moxley, even if you weren't the person who said it was Moxley, you definitely had a way of saying, like, well, you're in the gorilla. You are where Vince McMahon and Triple H are. So clearly, whoever had said it, because I'm sorry, I have no idea who said it, that said that Moxley had gotten the concussion in the brawl before the match. Why was somebody who was concussed in a wrestling match?
It's not quite Sting versus Jeff Harvey Victory Road. If that's the truth. But
Jay, come on. I understand that, them coming out with the money and then they're releasing all these people. But come on. I would love to sit here and keep going for like another 3 hours to try to convince you that should be your brainless over, the releases and then the announcement of the extra money. But I'm not going to do that.
It was a very close call for me this week. I really, I was contemplating even when we were getting into this, maybe I should switch them. But
Jay, what happened to Moxley on Wednesday, and I actually feel, believe me, when I feel bad for Jon Moxley, that says something. That, as my brainless this week, was Secretariat in the Belmont Steak in 1972. There was Secretariat, and the camera pans back, and everything else that could have been brainless finally got into the scene. That on Wednesday with Phoenix and Rich Knox. Rich Knox is probably going to end up getting my brainless moment of the year. Is the front runner heading into the clubhouse for my brainless moment of the year.
All right.
So if you like what you've seen, whether you are a first-time watcher or a continuous fan, make sure you like us on Facebook. Follow us on Twitter/X. Follow us on Instagram. And subscribe to us on YouTube at the letter T, the letter H, the letter E, the letter F, the letter N, MARKS, the F and Marks. If you like and follow, subscribe to us. We will do the same back. That has always been our
mantra. And just chiming in, Tim said The Rock returning with McAfee was his good. Bad was WWE releases. And brainless was WWE releases with the announcement of the signing of the new TV deal. Anyway, make sure, though, that you set up notifications so that when we go live on the Facebooks, you will be notified that we are live. Also, make sure you like us over on Spotify, so that way, if you're on the road, you'll be able to take the podcast with you, whether it's on Spotify, YouTube, or the Facebooks. We just want you to be able to join in with the chat and talk about our favorite sport we all love to hate, pro wrestling.
Yeah?
Yeah!
And how Ray Phoenix tried to kill Jon Moxley, who is a father and a husband.
Twice.
And possibly the third concussion that night that he suffered.
Right.
But I think
that
that's
we know of.
Yes.
Was he even bleeding at that point? Probably.
I have no idea. On his brain. his brain bladed.
It's not funny, but it is.
It's sad, but it's funny.
Yeah.
But I think that's it.
Yep, that is definitely it. There is absolutely nothing else for us to cover. We've covered everything.
Oh, this did not go the way I'm hoping for.
Wait.
You know, I just wanted to be known really quickly that I love the fact that I will be the main reason why the Brainless One has another sleepless night tonight. Why is that, Curtis Axel? Well, it's because of the fact that how egregious it is that F. Marks Hall of Famer Timmy would say that I was eliminated in the 2015 Royal Rumble. Sounds like something that his brother, fellow F. Marks Hall of Famer Tommy would say, because Tommy would want Hornswoggle to be in my spot. And what spot is that, Curtis Axel? Well, that is the spot where today, which is January 22nd, January, oh my God. September 20th. I had January on my mind because that's the Royal Rumble. And sorry.
Do you remember the night, 22nd September?
I feel like I should know this.
It's all right. I switched the words up a little bit. It's from the song September from Earth, Wind, and Fire. Do you remember?
Oh, God, yes, that is a great song. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know this. Yes, I'm sorry.
Yeah, you sing great.
I'll
auto-tune it later.
It's like listening to Cornette. But I'm sorry, Curtis Axel. That was on me. That was a Brainless from the Brainless for next week. Early Clubhouse leader.
It was last week too, but then WWE said, hold my beer, and then Ray Phoenix said, hold my beer, and hold my beer again.
And hold my beer as I drop this dude in his head. But today, September 22nd of 2023, at an impressive 3,162 days, I, F. Marks Hall of Famer, is still alive in the 2015 Royal Rumble. So, for episode 329 of Everyone's Favorite Wrestling Podcast, the F. Marks.
I'm Jay, and he is.
I am the Brainless One. Make sure you mark out
with your guac out. See you, everyone. Enjoy SmackDown.
Thanks for tuning in.
Yeah?
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 Yeah?